And off we go again. Just get us beautifully in shot. We're on. It's episode 14 of our Cornichfield Kitchen podcast. It's Hugo Woolley. Dear old friend. Dear old thing.
Thank you, left of the old.
So here we're going to talk about your journey, your life in hospitality.
Which is a long road. Well, that's because I'm old now.
So where did you start? Where were you born? Let's start.
I was born in Sussex in 1954 in February, and we lived. I was raised on a farm. My father was a farmer in the village of Lyminster, which is spelled Lym, and he had a dairy and arable farm there. We had cows and lovely fresh milk and cream, and everything was in, milk in churns. None of this.
Quite idyllic.
Yeah, it was all idyllic. He wasn't a successful farmer, bless him. He went into potatoes as well as dairy, and then and lost nearly a whole season of potatoes
right.
in a blight thing. So he became a solicitor. He went at the age of 40. He went back and became a solicitor.
Wow.
Then I went to Catering College in Chichester Catering College, which is now a university, so I can always say I went to a university. And I went on a craft catering, what's it called? City and Guilds, craft catering. So you learnt about everything. So chefing, housekeeping, front of house, that kind of everything. You had to learn French because in those days everybody was cooking in French.
Well, when I did it, it was general catering, and very similar. French, how to clean a room, how to run a reception desk,
how to make a bed.
Oh, hospital corners.
Oh no, ridiculous.
We had it as accommodation studies, Wednesday afternoons. And on one of my report, it was said, Adrian must realise that Wednesday afternoon is not an optional
extra.
I was always bunking off on a Wednesday. Anyway, so college catering.
College catering, and I did quite well at college, considering I was badly dyslexic. It was called word blindness in my day, and I decided that I needed to get some kind of decent job after I did college. Mm-hmm. And the college had a very good recruitment department. They got me a job at the Park Lane Hotel, Piccadilly, as a trainee manager, which I thought was sounds
fantastic.
Yeah, so £19 a week. And fortunately, my mother had bought a house in Battersea, and we all, my brothers, I've got 3 younger brothers, that's where we all ended up living, in Kersley Street in Battersea. And I went to work at the Park Lane Hotel in Piccadilly as a receptionist to start with. Yep. And it was awful. It was just so bad. I was fine with the guests, but I've obviously had a bad time with anything technical.
Right.
And in those days, there was this awful way of communicating, which I can't remember what it's called, but it was well before emails or anything like that, or faxes, and I just kept on going wrong, and then I tried to see if I could go and use my waiting skills, because the college had very successfully trained me very well in silver service, so I could do all and I rather enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. And I was actually thinking at one stage I'd like to become a butler, but that didn't work. Anyway, I just thought it was pretty awful. And I used to go to an area behind the Park Lane Hotel for my break in a place called Shepherd's Market.
Right.
And Shepherd's Market, unbeknownst to me then, at the tender age of 19, was well known for high-class prostitutes.
Right.
But the Shepherd's Market's a very pretty little sort of square, little pedestrian precinct area, and it had a Viennese tea house there where I enjoyed having a lovely cup of tea and a lovely cake, and watched these very nice girls that seemed to wander backwards and forwards, smiling at me. They all obviously thought they didn't realise that I was a meagre trainee manager at the Park Lane Hotel, because I was in morning suit,
Yeah.
but with a black waistcoat. So they obviously thought I was some kind of high-powered
Yeah.
young businessman or
Potential
something.
client.
I know. Anyway, that all went wrong. So I gathered that they were all prostitutes when I went back and said, "There's these marvellous girls." And the manager said, "Don't talk, they're prostitutes." I befriended this very pretty girl who was quite a bit older than me, but also enjoyed cups of tea. And she was just wore a plain black dress and was very personable. And I gathered that she was what's called a bunny mother.
Okay.
For the Playboy Club,
Yeah, yeah.
which was just round the corner in Park Lane. Yes, Park Lane. And she gathered that I had this, I've qualified in training people. I had this qualification called TS1 and TS2, Training Scheme 1 and Training Scheme 2. Training Scheme 1 is one-to-one,
Yeah.
and Training 2 is to a group. And she said, we desperately need trainers to train bunny girls. And I went, oh, really? Okay.
Tick tock.
Goodbye, Park Lane Hotel. And she was paying huge amounts of money. It's so I left the Park Lane Hotel, and it was February, bloody cold, and when I was given this huge manual, training manual, that we had to go towards. Of course, being a dyslexic, going through all this manual was a fantastic chore, but I did it. Luckily, it only related to a small part of my duties, which was to train bunny girls in the art of the bunny dip, which was to serve a drink. I think it was just drinks, because the food was served normally, but to serve the drink down behind you.
Right.
So you dipped, so basically, so one's boobs didn't spill out the front.
Right.
So they turn their back to the table, dip with a straight back, and then unfortunately I didn't do any of the training in the bunny club itself. It was
Right.
done in the place opposite, which was very cold. There was no heating, so none of the girls were in uniform. But they were all in these high heels, and I must say my admiration for them was tripled, because
Yeah.
they had to do this bunny dip in high heels. They must have had rock hard whatever muscle in your
Yeah.
thighs, because they just had to. Anyway, so I did the bunny dip. I was only there about 2 months. The main reason was that Victor Lowndes, who was one of the directors of the Bunny Club, had opened a new a new club in this country called Stocks,
Right.
and he basically nicked all the bunnies from there. So anyway, Bunny Club went well, but I was only there for a couple of months, which was a shame. And I never got to go into the Bunny Club
Oh no.
because you had to be over 21.
Right.
And I was 19. Don't think I even got to 20. So my next job was to work at the Cumberland Hotel in Piccadilly, Cumberland Hotel at Marble Arch, which as a restaurant receptionist, and it was all during this, during the Irish were bombing everything in London at the time. So we had to sort of do all the security stuff as well. But I was the assistant restaurant receptionist to the L'Épée d'Or restaurant at the Cumberland Hotel, which was quite good fun, much better pay, very long hours, and for some reason the Cumberland Hotel had two main restaurants. I can't remember, the L'Épée d'Or was the big main restaurant. L'Épée d'Or was a sword, a golden sword, and it basically had kebabs on it. And the waiters came out, all the waiters were sort of in their 40s and 50s, grumpy Englishmen, and all their assistants were for the young Spanish or Italian, that did all the sort of running around, and these old soured waiters would wait at table. It was very, very odd. Anyway, they would come out with when you ordered your brochette or kebab, it'd come out on a sword and it'd go into this sort of central oven thing, grill thing in the middle of the restaurant, and it would turn around and it would be cooked before your very eyes.
Bit of theatre.
Lot of theatre, and then they'd bathe it in or spray it with brandy, I think, or petrol, and set fire to it. So it comes to the table covered in flames. There was thankfully a very high ceiling. And then next door there was a sort of carvery restaurant, and next door to that was this extraordinary bar which I had to work in every now and again, called the Nocturne Bar, and it was very sort of it was deep in darkness and filled up with prostitutes and their clients, and it would slightly overspill to our reception area, so we sort of had to spend our lives. We were not permitting prostitutes to sit and wait in our reception area. So any single young lady there that looked remotely like a prostitute, we had to throw out in a delicate way, which is bloody difficult because sometimes they certainly weren't prostitutes. They might have been one of the Cumberland Hotel director's daughter.
Beautiful.
Which did happen, which was very. Anyway, I had a relatively good time there. It didn't pay very well. All the time in Battersea, where I lived, in Kersley Street, in Mum's house. Just round the corner in Battersea Park Road was this restaurant called Harvey's Restaurant. And Harvey's Restaurant, which was owned then by Harvey Sambrook, a chap called Harvey Sambrook, was bought by this Frenchman called Michel Gauthier. And I befriended Michel, and I had a lot of decent meals there and enjoyed myself and chatted to Michel and asked him if I could have a job there. And he said, yeah, come and cook, which I did. So I spent about 2 years, I mean, it's literally around the corner from where I lived, and it was a French restaurant. Michel came from Castelnaudary in the southwest of France, and our speciality then was cassoulet, which was basically beans, sausage, and meat, a preserved meat, which we were trying to sell it as if it was a sort of high class French restaurant.
Yeah.
Which selling sausage and beans as haute cuisine was slightly didn't quite work. So we had to sort of work out what else we were going to do. But it eventually became rather famous. Battersea Park Road had all sorts of marvellous restaurants like 555, Jack's Place, Pooh Corner, which was on the corner of Battersea Bridge Road and Battersea Park Road, which was owned by Gus Waugh from Waugh Port fame.
Right.
And it sort of became a little gastronomic enclave, and we had got lots of very famous people, including Princess Margaret and Roddy Llewellyn. Went 3 or 4 times. Roddy Llewellyn, her friend, thank you. He opened a club in the Battersea Old Town called the No Name Club, which didn't last very long. But she was marvellous. She loved coming to Harvey's, which was then renamed La Grenouille.
Okay.
And became terribly successful. We used to just not take any bookings, we just took people as they came in. But it ended up with sort of queues and queues, so we then started taking bookings. And we were permanently booked, and we were open 6.5 days a week, closed after Sunday lunch. We did this extraordinary French-British Franglaise Sunday lunch using a joint called faux filet, which was and with Yorkshire pudding. It just didn't quite work, but as a French restaurant.
You were cooking there?
I was still cooking. I did cooking for about a year, along with this wonderful chap called Julio Clerouf, who was an Algerian. He used to be Mr. Algeria Muscle Man.
Okay.
And he couldn't read. He couldn't read. I don't think he could read English.
Right.
So all the orders, when he was in charge of the kitchen, all the orders, you just tell him table number, and you just remember, and it would come out in order, and everything was up in his brain. Nothing was on paper for him, and I couldn't have done that. But no, I ran the kitchen for about 6 months, and then Michel put me out front. And after confessing that I was rather a dab hand at a Guéridon trolley, he bought a Guéridon trolley, and we did crêpes Suzettes and steak d'Anne.
Guéridon work.
I know.
When's the last time you heard the word Guéridon?
Guéridon trolley. And
You used to do that at college. Just love that stuff.
there was the partner to Michel, business partner, was this wonderful gay Canadian chap. First man I ever met who was gay, to my knowledge, and he was absolutely fantastic, and also knew about how to do Guéridon work. And we had competitions of who could get the flames to hit the ceiling. And we had it was a marvelous time, and it was a great performance. And then we managed to get there was a floor above the main floor, so we opened up upstairs as well, and we had 2 young Algerian waiters that had to do take everything upstairs, And it was fantastic. We then bought, or Michel bought, a place opposite, the fish and chip shop opposite La Grenouille, and we made it into as it was then, a wine and beer bar.
Right.
But, so you could get a wine and beer license. So it's the start of the wine bar era, and we opened it up, and I ran it, and it was called Frog's Legs Wine Bar. Again, it became rather famous, or possibly notorious. It had a little tiny kitchen at the back, and a sort of dining area. We didn't do much. We did a lot of stuff in baguettes and French onion soup, because we were terribly famous for our French onion soup. We did it properly, taking the onions, cooking them down,
A long time.
for a long time, and then putting in stock, letting that down, until it basically became cream, as opposed to, it was sort of so thick.
Yeah.
And then proper Gruyere and the baguette on the top. But we became very famous for that, so we did that. And all sorts of things happened there. We had wonderful, we had the production, of all the Thunderbirds things. Thunderbirds, go! Yeah. We had David Mitten, who was the director of Thunderbirds, and somebody Turner, what was he called? I can't remember. Anyway, he was the producer. And they used to come a lot too. And they used to bring all these famous people with them, like Andy Mackay, who was the saxophonist of Roxy Music. He came in a lot. Rod Argent of the band Argent. I mean, all these people nobody would probably have heard of.
This is a generational one.
It's a generational thing. Argent even launched their album Circus at Frog's Legs Wine Bar. Anyway, I had a marvellous time at Frog's Legs. From one of our regular customers who lived around the corner was a chap called Mark, and Mark was one of the assistant managers of a famous wine bar in Fleet Street called Elvino, and he suggested that I'd be great as I had lots of hair and a beard, not dissimilar to this, and he said I'd make a very good assistant manager at Elvino, because they're looking for people. So I said, okay, that would be great. How much is it? And they, fantastic salary, much better than what Michel was paying me. So I said to Michel, I'm sorry, I'm going to be leaving soon. He said, no, you can't leave. You can't leave until you find somebody to replace you.
Okay.
So I had to go and find somebody to replace me. And he said, and the person you replace has to know a lot about wine because I'm opening a wine business. I went, well, now you tell me. I wouldn't have mind doing something anyway. I had a friend called Jeremy, and Jeremy ran a bar in just off the King's Road called Charco's. And Jeremy came and was delighted to take over from me. And Jeremy was Jeremy King, who, but with Michel, together they purchased a rundown restaurant in the West End called the Caprice, and made it into what it became. And together and Michel unfortunately had to leave the country. I can't remember why, but I think it was probably, anyway. and leaving the Caprice to Jeremy and his then new partner Corbin, a chap called Corbin, and they just went from
Wow.
pillar to post after that.
And how old are you about this time?
I think I'd turned 21.
Jesus Christ, man! This is in your first sort of
20, yeah.
three or
God.
4 years of being in the
Yeah.
trade, and you're
No, I can't have been. I must have been 23.
23.
Yeah.
You're 23, and you've got. Well,
Yeah.
you've heard all this stuff.
Yes, it's. I went
This is
through all
going to be
that.
a long one.
No, it's not. I'll have to race through it.
No, you don't have to race at all. I want all the details. This is brilliant.
And then after Elvino in Fleet Street, which is a very well known wine bar. I mean, it's the oldest wine bar in the country. It was the year 1978 or 1979. I can't remember. 1978 or 1979 was their 100th year being open, and it was, that was a real eye opener. Elvino had this extraordinary rule that ladies weren't permitted to be served at the bar. They had to be seated to be served. I had just met my now wife, Pippa, then, and I said, come and to Elvino and have a drink, bring a friend.
Morning. Which is
And-
not delivery, but that's fine. We'll carry on.
What's that delivery? A delivery of?
Some bones, some-
Oh, lovely bones.
See you later.
Thank you.
Um, anyway, yes, Pippa came and was absolutely appalled by this archaic rule, which is that basically the Elvino was absolutely packed with journalists and lawyers, and because there were lots of lawyers because the Inns of Court were just behind Elvino, and all men, of course, and they weren't, there was nowhere for her to sit. And I couldn't say, well, you can't stand at the bar, so I managed to chuck a couple of friends off a table and sit her there. But anyway, it wasn't received well. It was the first sign that she shouldn't have anything to do with me. Anyway, I had a marvellous time at Elvino. I ran. They had a little restaurant underneath in the cellar, which didn't require much in the way of culinary skill.
Yeah.
There was a lot. It was a lot of bought-in stuff. It was quite sort of crammed, and Elvino has been doing sandwiches upstairs for years, and it was always beef and horseradish, sardines and cucumber, smoked salmon, and egg mayonnaise, and that was it. And it was all in a huge, great big glass cabinet, unrefrigerated. And in those days, there was no sort of rules about sandwiches being out for 2 hours, as it is. Probably isn't 2 hours nowadays, but unrefrigerated. It was there. They were. We didn't manage to kill anyone, anyways. And there was an awful lot of very, very famous people that went there. A lot of very famous journalists. And it was the days when Fleet Street was Fleet Street, full of journalists, newspapers and everything. It just about started to move to Wapping and all that that area. But and then anyway, I was there for three years, and then I did a year in the other Elvino, the old wine shades in the city of London, just off. I can't remember what it's called. Martin Lane, it was called, and it has one of the oldest fronts to the building because it was literally around the corner from where the Fire of London started.
Okay.
What was that?
Brick Lane?
No, not Brick Lane. something to do with puddings. Anyway,
Pudding Lane.
Pudding Lane. But
Something like
I can't remember. The old wine shades survived the Great Fire of London, whereas everything else was all wiped out. I managed that for a bit, and then after that, I decided to. I think I started on my. I went to. I can't remember what I did after that. I think I'd started selling wine,
Right.
not very successfully. And then I started to work for a chap called Bob Payton.
Okay.
I'd married Pippa. Bob
Rings a
Payton.
bell.
Bob Payton was a big Chicagoan, and he had the Chicago Pizza Pie Factory and the Chicago Rib Shack, and a couple of other restaurants. Huge, massive 400-seater restaurants, all selling ribs or pizzas, deep pan pizzas. And he was about to start converting pubs into bar and what are they called? Bar and grills, American bar and grills. Called Henry J. Beans, but his friends all call him Hank Bar and Grill. I know it was meant to be the longest title for a restaurant. Anyway, I was recruited to run the first one, which was I wasn't to run the first one. I think I was recruited to run the second one. It was a bit ago. Anyway, we started the first one in Abingdon Road, which is in South Ken, and converted this rundown pub into Henry J. Beans, and it was a huge success to the customers, but all the critics thought it was just appalling that a good old English pub was being Americanized.
Yeah, outrageous.
It was outrageous. Bob, who was a huge presence, he's an ex-advertising executive and had a huge personality. He wanted me to have an American accent because, and I said no, I can't do American accents, Bob. It's I'm. And he said, okay, you're Hugo, Hank's English cousin. And so I had Hugo, Hank's English cousin on my chest.
That's brilliant.
And it was a great eye-opener on how Americans train staff.
Right.
The training was fantastic. I mean, it was a science. And it was instilled in all our staff that when you come to work for My Kind of Town Group, which is what Bob Payton's restaurants group was called, you're coming this is a career, not a stopgap. So we had lots of students, but we tried to get people to think of it as a career, so they would be there for years as a waiter, but they would be terribly well trained and terribly well paid. And when I moved from the little Abingdon Road one to the big Kings Road Henry J. Beans, I was in charge of a lot of the training, which ever since I've admired all training in the catering industry, and it's so important that training is done well and
or at all these days.
Or at all. I know it's just.
There's so little icing going on.
Yes.
You know.
I mean, the best training I've seen is the seafood Ritzstein seafood restaurant. They do fantastic training, and you can see it in the seafood restaurant how good their training is.
Well, a lot of people have gone through that process.
And they go through that process and take the ethic. That's why you've got sort of wonderful chefs coming out of there,
Yeah.
including our mutual friend Nathan Outlaw.
Indeed.
There we go. Which is look what happened to him.
He's doing all right.
Yeah.
He's doing okay.
Well, from there, from working for Henry J. Beans. Sadly, Bob got killed in a car accident, which was very sad, and so everything slightly collapsed. But I was headhunted by a company called Imperial Inns and Taverns.
Mm-hmm.
They were starting to do the same sort of thing as Bob was doing, of buying pubs and converting them into things called Sullivan's, which are big American restaurants. Harvester, which is, I think Harvesters are still going, I'm not totally sure.
So, yeah.
And the Domes, which were meant to be French inspiration and places. And they did one other, I can't remember. But I was recruited to open this huge American bar and grill called Sullivan's in Croydon. It was a vast old pub, which they did up into this sort of American style place. It was quite successful, but it had this huge ballroom at the back because it was near Penge.
Okay.
And Penge, of course, was the centre of ballroom dancing at the time. So, and there was a lot of sort of application because it was a specially sprung floor, this ballroom at the back of the pub.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people saying, could we not make it into a ballroom? And I said, well, it doesn't quite work with our American image.
Yeah.
Anyway, we had dances there, but I hated it. There was a lot of violence going on and a lot of strange gangs of people coming in, just making life very difficult. I just hated it. And so I decided that I've had enough of that. But I said that I wanted to leave, and they said, oh, well, could you run, we've got a new dome opening in the City of London in Seacole Lane, which is off Ludgate Hill. I went, oh, well, I used to work at Elvino, so I'll go and run that. So I ran this dome. I've left out a whole bunch of my career, which is
We can
do another day. But anyway, the dome was again a great success. It was full of it was the 1980s. It was all the sort of all the money brokers and
the yuppies.
and we had a gas, except when we first opened, brand spanking new kitchen, all brand spanking new equipment. I designed this menu, and we had this wonderful new kind of deep fat fryer, which had a tap that you turned on, and it went through a huge filter, so you could reuse the. Then it was a very new thing. We had price lookup tills, which again was then a very, very new thing. Everything was very technical and fantastic. The lighting was done by computer. Everything was very technically advanced, except for this deep fat fryer, which when we switched it on for the first time on the opening night, it wouldn't stop heating up. And it heated up and heated up, and the thing then self-combust. It just went up in a cloud of smoke. All my training about fire completely went out of my brain, and I couldn't work out what to do. So luckily there was it had a lid, this thing, so I whacked it on the lid, and there were sort of little holes around the side, and the flames just came out like little blow torches all around the side, and hitting the wall. So I thought, right, we're going to have to get the fire brigade in on this.
Probably best.
So, and the place was full of people, champagne and opening music, and I asked if the fire brigade could come from the back,
Discreet.
which they said
Sirens,
no.
please.
Basically, we're running hoses through the front. Anyway, I had to evacuate everybody. So it was a disastrous opening. The place was called Brady's at one stage, sorry, it was called Brady's. It's now called the Dome, and it became very famous for having parties for these very rich young executives and things. And it sort of spilled out on the only sort of really bit of lawn that the City of London had, which was in front. And it was, we meant to close at 8 in the evening. It was, could be open for sort of breakfast, and meant close it. But in the summer, we just went on and on and on. We got in a bit of trouble with the law, but thankfully not a lot, because the license was in my name, which didn't help. All this time, I used to go, before I opened up, I used to go to this little cafe, which is on Ludgate Hill, a little Italian cafe. And I never quite understood why they didn't do better sandwiches and better coffee and better everything, really. Because there it was on Ludgate Hill, the hill up to St Paul's Cathedral. And the lease on this cafe apparently had come up, I was told, by the owner. And he said, would you like the lease? And I went, oh, what for? He said, well, do you want the lease to, make it into a sandwich shop or something? And I went, oh. And my brother Ol had, my youngest brother, was sort of doing he was at Bristol University doing something to do with economics. And his idea was to become something to do with economics and business. So he wanted to come in with me. So my father gave us some money, and we bought the lease, and we made it into Woolly Broths. And we decided, I went to America, to New York, and I did a few days' work in the Carnegie Deli in New York, right. and the I can't remember the name of the other one, and wanted to see how American delis worked.
Yeah.
So I brought it back to Woolies in Ludgate Hill, and we started off pretty slowly, and then Goldman Sachs, the bank, American bank, moved into the Old Bailey, just round the corner from where we were, and we suddenly started getting all these desk lunch orders, and it got bigger and it got bigger, and they sort of started making requests, like they just wanted chicken breast, they didn't want, they wanted rarer beef, and they wanted all sorts of things that we sort of never really did before. And it was literally us and Burley's, another smart sandwich shop, and there was one other, but I can't remember what it was called, that made these very good, thick sandwiches with fillings that thick, and it was we became busier and busier and busier. It got absolutely fantastic. We were doing 300 desk lunches a day.
Wow.
We had